On the day you were born, your mother pushed for 3 whole trays before she finally got you out. After you were born, you didn't cry or fuss, just stared quietly at the midwife, which rattled her so badly she raised her hand and smacked your backside. But even after your butt turned red, you still didn't make a single sound. That was because the moment you were born, a system panel appeared before your eyes. Reborn, living a second life as a human. From the very moment of your birth, you were already facing choices. And now here was the very first one you had to make. To cry or not to cry. Cry and you'd be just like any other baby. But your background is unusual, and being ordinary is your greatest shield. Don't cry, and your uniqueness would win you an opportunity. Seize it well, and it could become the foundation of an extraordinary life. Finally, after a long and almost agonizing wait, the room door was slowly pushed open. When the midwife's slightly weary face appeared before everyone, Lu Jian nearly rushed over in an instant. Midwife, what's the situation? Is the baby all right? The midwife didn't respond to Lu Jian's question. Instead, she went straight to Lu Zhang's side. Sir, the child has been born. Both mother and son are safe. It's a young master. It was clearly good news, but Lu Zhang could sense an unusual emotion in the midwife's voice. He didn't respond right away, just looked at her coldly and gave a small hum. Sure enough, after a few seconds of hesitation, the midwife continued somewhat vaguely. The young master, he's a little strange. Strange. The expression that had just softened on Lu Zhang's face immediately froze. What happened? I can't explain it in a few words. You should go in and see for yourself. With that, the midwife led Lu Zhang inside. Watch her, don't let her in. After giving an order to the guard at his side, Lu Zhang followed the midwife into the room. Once inside, Lu Zhang immediately spotted Lu Yu lying on the bed, exhausted from the birth. She had already closed her eyes and drifted off. After confirming his daughter was all right, Lu Zhang was led by the midwife to the cradle beside the bed, where the tiny infant lay. Just one look and she already knew exactly what the midwife had meant by strange. This baby was far too quiet, and it wasn't the stillness of a dazed or slow child. Right now, the infant was rolling those big round eyes around, looking curiously in every direction. Even when Lu Zhang's gaze met hers, she could feel that this baby was communicating through those eyes. I've tried everything, but the young master, let alone crying, hasn't made a single sound at all. The midwife's words rang true in her ears. I understand. You've worked hard, midwife. Lu Zhang turned to the midwife beside her, and for the first time, a faint smile appeared on that composed face. I'll be counting on you to take good care of the young lady and the young master from here on. With that said, she left the room alone. You go back. The baby and that boy stay with me. Lu Zhang looked at Lu Jian and spoke coldly. Truth was, in Lu Zhang's original plan, regardless of the outcome, she had only ever wanted to keep her own daughter by her side. She didn't like Lu Jian. She had never truly accepted this marriage from the bottom of her heart. So naturally, she had no intention of accepting her daughter's child. But just now, the way that baby had behaved was far too unusual. Even in the moment when their eyes met, a thought had stirred in Lu Zhang's heart. That long-buried wish she had kept deep inside. Perhaps it could actually come true through this child. Sir, it's the custom at Lu family manor for a child's name to be given by the elders. What would you like to name the young master? The midwife finally asked. The child's name shall be Lu Feng. Your choice had successfully allowed you to stay at Lu Manor. Born into this world, facing this entirely new existence, you showed a keen curiosity toward all the people and things around you. That was the natural reaction of any normal infant. Congratulations, you are perfectly normal. But don't forget your identity. Being ordinary is your greatest shield. Balance, stay neutral toward everything around you. Wait for the right moment to come. As a newborn infant, your abilities are very limited right now. But precisely because of that, any unusual behavior from you would draw far more attention. Your grandfather has always yearned to achieve greatness in the martial way. A single accident crushed that dream entirely. Seize the moment and show a strong interest in martial arts. It is sure to make this old man look at you in a completely different light. Great fortune. An interest in martial arts? Lying in your cradle, you looked at the newly appeared options and fell into thought. 3 days later, inside Lu Zhang's study. Having listened to the midwife's report, Lu Zhang gazed at the calligraphy hanging on the wall and sank into deep thought. Is the child truly, as you say, showing no reaction whatsoever? He finally turned around and spoke. That's right. Strange. The young master eats and drinks fine, but no matter what I do to entertain him, he's completely indifferent. The midwife spoke with a look of helpless confusion. Lu Zhang's eyes flickered with a similar expression. After a moment of silence, he looked at the midwife and said, Take me to see him. Led by the midwife, Lu Zhang came to see you once again in your cradle. Just as the midwife had described, at this moment you were lying quietly in the small bed beside Lu Yu. A pair of wide eyes moved steadily, staring upward as if deep in thought. Lu Zhang's expression grew increasingly complex at the sight. The very first time he had seen this grandchild of his, those were the exact same eyes. Not vacant, not slow. It was more like searching, like waiting. Could this be an illusion? No. This was absolutely not an illusion. Could this child truly have been sent by heaven to make up for his own regrets? With slightly trembling hands he reached out and felt the pulse of the infant before him. After confirming the child's body had nothing wrong with it, the two quietly left the room. In a few days when the weather is nice, take the young master out for a walk around. Perhaps it's just the environment inside this room that he doesn't like, Lu Zhang said with a serious expression to the midwife before leaving. Half a month later, on a clear afternoon, a rapid set of footsteps shattered the silence in Lu Zhang's study. Sir, the young master, the midwife gripped the doorframe, gasping for breath as she spoke. What happened? Slow down and tell me. Lu Zhang set down the book he was reading and looked up at the midwife. The young master smiled. The flustered midwife finally got those words out completely. It was no wonder that the usually composed midwife was in such a state. After all, this was the first time in over a week that the child had shown such a strong reaction. Where was it? When did this happen? Lu Zhang's expression tightened immediately as he pressed for details. Just now, at the training ground. What? The moment the words training ground came out, Lu Zhang felt his entire body tremble beyond his control. He could feel an unnamed heat rushing from the center of his chest straight up to his brain. Sit down and tell me every detail. He spoke with an almost trembling voice. Lu Zhang's reaction left the midwife momentarily stunned. For as long as anyone could remember, Lu Zhang, the head of Lu family manor, had always presented himself as steady and composed. To see him like this, losing his composure, was something the midwife had simply never witnessed before. After her brief shock, she calmed herself and recounted everything in detail. Following Lu Zhang's instructions, the midwife would find suitable moments to carry you around the manor. But what troubled her was that during the first few outings, flowers, grass, fish, insects, artificial hills, ponds, basically every place the midwife thought might interest a child, they had all been visited without exception. Yet the child still gave her absolutely no reaction at all. Until one day, with a mindset of having nothing to lose, the midwife carried you to the training ground. It was the very last place in all of Lu family manor that she had not yet taken the child. In the midwife's mind, that place full of men sparring and dust flying everywhere was simply not somewhere appropriate to bring a child. But the result turned out to be the opposite. When the hunting squad was practicing their fist techniques at the training ground, not only did the child show no sign of fear whatsoever, but for the very first time, the child actually broke into a big smile. Are you certain you didn't see it wrong? Was there anyone else who saw it? The midwife had barely finished speaking when Lu Zhang immediately pressed with more questions. Yes, the midwife nodded repeatedly. When I went to the training ground, the head trainer of the hunting squad, Steward Wang, was with me the entire time. He can vouch for it. Old Wang. Upon hearing that name, a flash of something lit up in Lu Zhang's eyes. This Steward Wang had been by Lu Zhang's side since he was young. He could be said to be the person Lu Zhang trusted most in all of Lu family manor. If even he had witnessed it, then where is he right now? Lu Zhang could barely contain the excitement surging inside him. He's right outside waiting. Steward Wang heard you wanted to see him, sir, so he came along straight away. The midwife answered. Bring him in. Quickly, get him in here. Lu Zhang's voice trembled visibly. After Wang Hong was brought into the study, the midwife very tactfully stepped out of the room. Left alone inside were Wang Hong and Lu Zhang, a master and loyal companion who had been together for decades. Naturally, between them there was a perfect unspoken understanding. Before Lu Zhang even had a chance to ask, Wang Hong spoke first. I saw it with my own eyes. That child might truly be as you had hoped, someone with extraordinary talent in the martial way. Lu Zhang said nothing upon hearing these words. He simply looked steadily at Wang Hong, and in those usually sharp eyes, there was now an unmistakable glimmer of tears. That rare display of vulnerability moved Wang Hong deeply as well. Having been at Lu Zhang's side since childhood, he understood all too well why Lu Zhang was this stirred. This man, the current master of Lu Manor and head of the Lu clan, had shown breathtaking talent in the martial way from a young age. Before he even turned 30, Lu Zhang had already broken through the 3 stages of flesh, blood, and bone. That achievement made him the youngest peak martial artist in the entire history of Lu family manor, and even of Hongshan County. He was only one step away from becoming a powerful martial master. In a world where strength is supreme, if Lu Zhang could have broken through from martial artist and become a martial master, it would have benefited not just him personally, but the entire Lu family manor would have risen with him as well. A manor protected by a martial master was something even the dominant sex of the region would have to show respect toward. But just as everyone in Lu family manor was looking toward the future with great anticipation, the cruel reality came and shattered every hopeful dream. During a hunting expedition in the Jinshan Mountains, Lu Zhang and his party unexpectedly encountered a black bear with a century of cultivation, something almost unheard of. Though Lu Zhang's desperate all-out burst and the combined effort of every hunter managed to slay the fearsome bear, the price Lu family manor paid was devastating. By any measure, that battle alone had been one of the bloodiest hunts in the manor's history. Lu Zhang personally, having absorbed the brunt of the black bear's attacks, suffered severe injuries that damaged his inner energy to a critical degree. Though he barely kept his life thanks to timely treatment afterward, his body never fully recovered from that point on. There was naturally no way he could make any further progress in the martial way. And it was after that incident that Lu family manor, which had been rising rapidly, began to fall just as fast. Wang Hong had lived through all of it firsthand and understood clearly the toll those years had taken on Lu Zhang. On the surface, he seemed to have long since made peace with the past. But deep inside, that profound sense of regret and unwillingness never left him, lingering constantly at the core of his being. It was precisely because of this that over the years Lu Zhang had poured all his energy into nurturing the younger generation of Lu family manor. Though his efforts had yielded some results, a true genius with the kind of talent Lu Zhang himself had shown in his youth had simply never appeared again. But the birth of this infant had given Lu Zhang a reason to hope once more. Because of his body's severe damage, Lu Zhang had no other descendants besides his daughter Lu Yu. So from the moment he first learned that Lu Yu had given birth to a boy, there had been a quiet but different kind of excitement stirring in Lu Zhang's heart. After all, this child carried his bloodline. And everything this child had shown since birth was only continuing to confirm what he had been thinking. "Old Wang, I'd like to ask you to help me with something." Lu Zhang said this while sliding an extremely ancient-looking lacquered box across to Wang Hong. It was a small, intricately crafted box no bigger than a palm. The patterns on its surface appeared simple at first glance, yet a single look revealed an inexplicable sense of age and history. The moment he laid eyes on it, Wang Hong felt his breath catch involuntarily. Whatever was stored inside such a precious box was certainly no simple matter. Though he had already braced himself mentally, when the item truly appeared before his eyes, he still felt his heart skip a beat. Inside the box lay an inner core roughly the size of a kidney. From the markings on its surface, it was clear this came from a terrifyingly powerful beast with a century of cultivation. This came from that black bear back then, didn't it? What Wang Hong was referring to was of course that same black bear with a century of cultivation. Lu Zhang held Wang Hong's gaze and slowly nodded. Ever since he had retrieved it from that black bear's body, he had been keeping it with the utmost care. Until this very day, that inner core had been Lu Zhang's deepest secret. An inner core from a century-old beast, this was likely something that even the local sects would covet. "You want to use it on that child?" he continued. Lu Zhang didn't speak. He simply gave another solemn nod. But he was just born not long ago. How could his body possibly withstand the immense spiritual energy contained within it? Wang Hong's face showed deep concern. As a peak martial artist himself, he knew all too well that even with his current level of physical strength, fully digesting and absorbing an inner core like this would require an enormous amount of effort on his part, let alone a newborn infant. "You don't need to worry about that," Lu Zhang responded for the first time. "These past few days I've been going through a great deal of old records, and I've already come up with a safe method. As long as we grind this core into powder and feed it to the child little by little through his food, it should work." Upon hearing this, Wang Hong's expression shifted slightly. As a martial artist, he naturally understood that the infant stage was the period when a person's body was most malleable. If this method actually worked, just what kind of terrifying physical enhancement would it bring to that child? "Then what do you need me to do?" he asked. "In addition to this inner core, I'd also like to ask you to use your true energy daily to nourish the child's meridians to help him better digest and absorb the core." Lu Zhang looked at Wang Hong with a face full of resolve. "You are the only peak martial artist in Lu family manor, and you are also the only person I trust completely. There is no one else I can entrust this to. Sir, leave it to me. As long as I'm here, nothing will go wrong with the young master's body." Wang Hong slowly closed the lid of the brocade box and looked at Lu Zhang with a firm and solemn nod. "Ever since you made your presence known that time at the training ground, you noticed that your life had changed dramatically. The most obvious sign was that the number of people coming and going from your room had increased. Your mother, whether from physical weakness after childbirth or something else, had been looking downcast ever since you had any awareness of your surroundings. Though she still showered you with love and care, it seemed like she only showed even a faint sign of life on her face when she was tending to you. The rest of the time, she was almost always lying alone on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Though you had no way of speaking up to ask, you noticed that the number of times your grandfather came to see you had also increased. What left an even deeper impression on you was that one wrinkled old man who would also appear at a fixed time every single day. Each time he came, he would personally bring a bowl of fragrant warm porridge, patiently spooning it into your mouth one bite at a time. After that, he would place his slightly roughened old hand on your wrist. And every time this happened, you could feel a gentle and warm current flowing from his hand, slowly making its way through your arm and into your body. Not only that, after this warm flow entered your body, it seemed to produce a mysterious reaction with the food you had swallowed. Every time this process was over, your whole body would feel warm and comfortable. Gradually, as the old man came more and more often, you were pleasantly surprised to find that even without the old man deliberately channeling energy into you, your body had actually begun to generate that warm current on its own. Time passed just like that, steadily moving through another half a month. On this particular day, you had just finished another cycle of true energy circulation and were about to close your eyes for a good night's sleep when suddenly the panel that had been silent for so long appeared once again and gave you a new set of options. You were now around 6 months old, the time when families begin looking for a playmate for the child. When it comes to choosing a playmate, what will you choose? Accept the arrangement. Choose a peer who is around your age. At their age, aside from crawling and making meaningless noises, they have nothing particularly special about them. Spending time with them would bring nothing but noise and boredom. You would gain nothing from it at all. Bad luck. On top of that, in an overly restless state, a person is most at risk of inner energy deviation. Great misfortune. Give up on choosing and keep to yourself. While this can temporarily avoid the problems mentioned above, being alone is not only boring. Staying in bed for extended periods is equally detrimental to your physical development right now. Neutral. Take the initiative and keep the choice firmly in your own hands. Who says a playmate has to be a person? The manor has been raising a pack of fierce king dogs used for hunting. Among them, the one kept at your grandfather's side is especially outstanding. It will be your best companion and also your greatest teacher. 3 days later, in Lu Zhang's study. You mean the young master doesn't like being around other children? Lu Zhang looked at the midwife with a helpless expression and spoke. That's right, sir. Just as you instructed, I spent half a month searching for suitable children in the manor. When I brought these children before the young master over the past few days, nearly every one of them ended up making him cry and fuss within a short while. The midwife said with a bewildered look, not knowing what to do. Not even the Lu family's little girl, who was considered quite pretty. Lu Zhang pressed further. That child. After a brief pause, the midwife replied, the young master did stay with her a bit longer than the others. But it wasn't long before he started crying and fussing too. To be honest, sir, I really have no solution for this situation. Lu Zhang was visibly caught off guard by the midwife's answer, finding it somewhat amusing and frustrating at the same time. After a short silence, he looked at the midwife and continued. In your view, how should we handle this going forward? Keep looking for the right child playmate. Continuing to search for a suitable playmate is certainly one way. But these past few days, this old servant has actually noticed something else. I'm not sure whether I should mention it. The midwife looked at Lu Zhang and responded in her composed manner. This child doesn't seem to like companions his own age, but he appears to have a strong interest in something else entirely. What is it? Go ahead and tell me. What? Apparently out of surprise, when Lu Zhang said those words, his whole tone rose several notches involuntarily. That's right. A few days ago, a dog in the yard gave birth to a litter of puppies. This old servant brought the young master over to have a look. And who would have guessed, when the young master saw those puppies, he got so excited he started grabbing and poking at them. The midwife described the scene vividly. Not only that, just yesterday when I was carrying the young master past your study, he caught sight of the big dog guarding the door, and the little one started waving his arms and kicking his legs, practically lunging forward, making it nearly impossible for this old servant to hold on to him. Once the midwife finished speaking, Lu Zhang felt as though his entire body had been struck by lightning. Is this really true? He asked, voice almost trembling. Absolutely true. In fact, today when this old servant went to check on him, the young master was already stretching his little mouth open and making sounds at me. The way it sounded, it was almost like the words big dog. The midwife replied with complete seriousness. Bring the young master here now. I want to see him right this moment. At the same time, his gaze landed on the large white dog standing at the doorway. The white dog the midwife mentioned was named Baijian. He had been found by a young Lu Zhang during a hunting trip in the mountains, discovered in a secluded rocky crevice. When they first met, Baijian was only 2 or 3 months old. At that time, he was covered in wounds, curled up motionless in a corner, clinging to the last thread of life. With just one look, Lu Zhang made the immediate decision to bring him back to the manor. Beyond simple pity for the creature's condition, it was the fierce yet unbroken gleam in those weakened eyes that had deeply captivated Lu Zhang. In that very moment, Lu Zhang had already made up his mind that this little one was absolutely not as simple as he looked on the surface. After bringing him back to the manor, under Lu Zhang's careful care, the little creature recovered his lively and energetic state within just a few days. Such incredible vitality only strengthened Lu Zhang's initial suspicion. And sure enough, as this young wolf grew, his terrifying power was fully revealed through that process. Frightening explosive strength, incredible speed, overwhelming combat ability, all of that, combined with his extraordinarily rare snow-white fur. Almost everyone who had ever seen him couldn't help but instinctively connect this young wolf with the mysterious wolf king said to roam the depths of the Zongyuan Mountains. Because the way he pounced on prey was so swift and violent, and because his leaping form looked so much like a feathered arrow fired at full speed, Lu Zhang ultimately named him Baijian, meaning white arrow. Old Bai. Lu Zhang looked at Baijian standing at the entrance, perfectly still and poised, and called out to him warmly. The white wolf, who had been maintaining absolute vigilance, turned around almost instantly at the sound of his master's call. Come here. Lu Zhang smiled and waved Baijian over. The white wolf that had looked so fierce just moments ago transformed in an instant into a completely obedient companion. Lu Zhang felt a slight shimmer before his eyes, as the white wolf had already very obediently settled down right at his feet. Old partner, it's really good to have you by my side. Lu Zhang reached out a trembling hand and placed it gently on Baijian's broad forehead, softly stroking him. I'm sorry for keeping you here with me. He let out a quiet sigh, speaking under his breath. Having watched this white wolf grow up from a pup, Lu Zhang understood clearly just what terrifying potential lay dormant within Baijian. If it hadn't been for that accident, perhaps by now he would have already successfully transformed from an ordinary beast into a true spirit beast. It was the same black bear, that very black bear again. In order to help Lu Zhang slay it, Baijian had thrown himself into the fight without any regard for his own injuries, using a reckless style of trading wound for wound, and had barely managed to pin down the black bear long enough. Not only that, afterward Baijian had dragged his heavily wounded body and ran dozens of miles through the mountains to bring Lu Zhang back to Lu family manor. According to what the renowned physician who treated Lu Zhang at the time said, had there been even a moment's delay, Lu Zhang would almost certainly not have survived. But it was precisely because of that, Baijian had nearly exhausted every last bit of his true energy, and the inner core that had only just barely begun to form was completely destroyed afterward. Though Baijian seemed to have recovered his former vitality after healing, Lu Zhang knew all too clearly in his heart that the once bright future Baijian had been heading toward had, just like his own, been buried completely. Thinking of it again now, Lu Zhang felt an overwhelming surge of guilt. His trembling hand gently stroked Baijian's head as he let out a long, heavy sigh. Baijian seemed to see right through his master's thoughts. While letting out a soft, low rumble, he very cooperatively pressed the softest part of his forehead gently against Lu Zhang's body, rubbing against him. It looked like affection and also like comfort. The warm and tender moment in the study was eventually broken by a set of hurried footsteps. Of course, it was the midwife arriving. Sir, I've brought the young master. The midwife stood at the study doorway, catching her breath as she spoke. In her arms was a slightly groggy Lu Feng, who had just been roused from sleep. Lu Zhang looked up and spotted the midwife drenched in sweat, a look of confusion flickering across his face. The midwife had always been physically robust. On a normal day, whether it came to appetite or strength, she was in no way inferior to a grown man. So why was she this out of breath just from carrying an infant not yet a year old along a short stretch of hallway? Stop standing there. Come in and sit down. Lu Zhang quickly gestured for her to come inside. Once the midwife was seated, he reminded her gently. You really need to take care of your own health too. Caring for the young master is important, but your well-being matters just as much. Thank you for your concern, sir. The midwife replied, having caught her breath a little. Once she was settled, he returned to the topic they had been discussing just before. You're saying this child is especially interested in old Bai? That's right. Just a moment, the midwife said while gently rocking you, who were still half asleep. As she rocked you, she whispered softly in your ear. Young master, wake up. I've brought you to see the big dog again. Sure enough, the moment those last two words fell, you, who had your eyes firmly shut just a second ago, seemed to hit a switch. Your body sprang up like a coil, launching yourself directly out of the midwife's arms. Then, with those wide, bright eyes wide open, you began scanning the room eagerly in every direction. The moment your gaze finally landed on Baijian crouching nearby like a small mountain, accompanied by an excited burst of babbling, this tiny infant who had been fast asleep just moments before burst into wild arm-waving and leg-kicking. Lu Zhang, who had witnessed this scene firsthand, instinctively looked over at the midwife across from him. Both of them saw the same deep shock reflected in each other's eyes. Child, do you really like him? Lu Zhang leaned his face close to yours, speaking with an almost trembling, hoarse tone full of restrained emotion. You stared wide-eyed at your grandfather and, with almost no hesitation at all, gave a firm and enthusiastic nod. Good, good. Old partner, do you see that? This child likes you very much. Lu Zhang turned his head toward the white wolf resting against his feet, his voice rising involuntarily with barely contained excitement. At once, seemingly sensing the excitement in his master's voice, the white wolf let out a low, eager rumble and slowly lifted his head, which had been resting low. Come, child, touch him. Lu Zhang's trembling hand reached out and gently guided your small, delicate hand onto Baijian's head, which had already drawn close. The soft and warm sensation flowing through your palm into your body was so incredibly comfortable that you couldn't help but instinctively half close your eyes. Such a warm and harmonious scene made even the normally strict and rarely smiling Lu Zhang unconsciously lift the corners of his mouth just slightly. In the midwife's eyes, this usually utterly serious old man looked, at that moment, like he had an indescribable kind of gentleness about him. Old partner, I'll be leaving my precious grandchild in your care from now on. All right, he said with a smile, gently patting the white wolf's head. Awoo. With a crisp and clear low howl, the white wolf gave a firm nod of that massive head. All right, midwife, you can set aside the matter of finding a playmate for the young master. Lu Zhang turned to the midwife beside him and said with a smile. And at that moment, the midwife, who was still reeling from shock, didn't respond right away. She simply stood there, mouth slightly agape, staring blankly at the enormous dog who seemed to be directing things like a person. That look of hers perfectly embodied the expression stunned beyond words. Though she had heard stories about this great dog from the servants long ago, in the midwife's practical mind, the big dog at the master's door, aside from being large and heavy, was really no different from any other dog in the manor. But what had just unfolded before her eyes had truly shaken the midwife to the point of questioning reality itself. Of course, the things that would shock her were far from over. Just as she had barely begun to collect herself, she suddenly felt a white flash dart past her eyes. Then she felt her arms go frighteningly light. And then she realized that somehow, the young master, who had just been in her arms, had been lifted onto the white wolf's back. It turned out the white wolf had just used its mouth to toss the young master straight up there. Compared to the midwife's state of utter fright, you on top of that back were a completely different story. On that little face of yours, there was not a single trace of panic or fear. The smile on your face hadn't disappeared at all, but had instead grown even brighter and wider. Yeah. From atop the white wolf's back, you waved your right hand excitedly, looking just like a young commander on horseback giving the charge. The white wolf seemed to understand his little rider's intention. He turned his head and looked at Lu Zhang, and in those eyes there was actually a faint look of inquiry. Perfectly in sync with Baijian as always, Lu Zhang of course knew exactly what his old partner meant. Go on. Take him for a good tour of our Lu family manor. He smiled and gave the white wolf a pat on the head. And so, with an excited long howl, the pair, one human and one wolf, vanished in a white blur and completely disappeared from the study. You were now sitting on the white wolf's back, and as he sprinted at full speed, the scenery before your eyes shifted rapidly. Though the white wolf was incredibly fast, sitting on top of him, you couldn't feel a single bump or jolt. The experience was absolutely 1,000 times better than being jostled around in the midwife's arms just moments before. That sensation, slightly thrilling yet remarkably steady, gave you a feeling like riding the Snow-White Dwarf's roller coaster at Disneyland from a past life. Of course, what you didn't know was that this exhilarating ride had also stirred up a small wave of commotion among the people they passed along the way. Wait, was there something that just flew past us? One of them, holding a broom handle, said with a stunned expression. It went too fast, I couldn't make it out. Another servant watering plants turned and nodded. By the shape of it, I think it was the master's white wolf. A third servant mopping the floor jumped in. Hold on, I think I saw something riding on top of it. Somehow it looked like a baby. A fourth servant trimming potted plants added with a follow-up remark. Are you joking? You're telling me that the white wolf that normally stands guard at the master's door is now running wild around the manor, and there's a tiny baby on his back? A fifth servant's remark brought this little exchange to a perfectly rounded conclusion. After that, all of them, nearly in unison, came to a unanimous conclusion. The scene they had just witnessed must have been a group hallucination caused by the recent heat wave. The racing white wolf brought you to a particularly secluded patch of grass somewhere in Lu Manor. Then he gradually came to a stop. He lowered himself down, shook his head, and signaled for you to climb off his back. Though you were still not yet half a year old, the true energy that had been strengthening your body since then meant your limbs could already support quite quick and stable crawling. When all four of your limbs were fully planted on the grass, the white wolf slowly stretched out his forelimbs and performed a perfectly standard stretching pose. Then he turned his head and looked at you with a deeply meaningful gaze. With just one glance, you understood exactly what that look from the white wolf meant. He was telling you to follow along with this same posture. And the very moment you matched the position the white wolf had shown you, almost down to the exact angle, you suddenly understood the concrete meaning behind the words companion and teacher that the system prompt had mentioned. Just from holding that posture for a short while, the one the white wolf had taken, you could already feel that your body was benefiting greatly from it. The most direct sensation was that as you held this position, the tendons and bones throughout your body were being thoroughly stretched and extended. Of course, the real benefits went far beyond that. Ever since you had started intentionally circulating true energy inside your body had been steadily strengthening through the process. But along with that strengthening, you would occasionally feel a strange, almost aching sensation deep within your tendons and bones. This feeling had been extremely faint at first, but as the true energy gradually increased, it had been growing stronger and more intense. And just from holding this posture for a short while, after a brief moment of pain, you were astonished to find that the strange sensation had actually faded away completely. What replaced it was a faint, gentle numbness that spread warmly throughout your entire body, leaving you feeling indescribably at ease. Even the flow of true energy inside you had become noticeably smoother in that instant. You naturally understood the meaning behind the system's warning in that moment as well. If you continued to stay lying in bed for long periods of time, the ever-increasing true energy building up inside you might actually cause serious and irreversible damage to your body. Of course, this stretching posture was only the simplest first lesson the white wolf gave you. Once he saw that you had fully adapted to the stance he had taught you, in the very next moment, you keenly noticed that the white wolf had begun deliberately drawing your attention to the movement of his abdomen. The muscles of the white wolf's stomach, with every contraction and expansion, maintained a fixed rhythm throughout. Strung together, there was an unmistakable sense of cadence and flow to it. Inhale, exhale. Yes, he was teaching me a breathing technique. The moment you realized this, you naturally dared not take it lightly. You quickly focused your full attention and began mimicking the rise and fall of the white wolf's belly as you breathed. At first, you didn't notice anything particularly special about it. But as the process deepened, you gradually began to sense the subtleties within. As you fully settled into this breathing rhythm, you found that your entire being had sunk into a state of deep immersion. This immersion not only sharpened your own focus, but as the process continued, you discovered that your awareness of your own body was becoming increasingly clear and precise. Little by little, with each breath you took, you seemed to be able to feel every single pore opening and closing throughout your body, every muscle engaging and releasing. And eventually, even the subtle movement of each organ inside you could be perceived with full clarity. And the combined result of all of this was that you found your control over your own body was growing stronger with every passing moment. You could better keep your body in a deeply calm and composed state during ordinary times, while in moments when explosive power was needed, you could instantly mobilize everything your body had to offer. Still as a deep forest, swift as a startled rabbit. That's right, these 8 words were the most fitting description of what this breathing method achieved. From the initial physical stretching to the breathing technique that followed, both seemed simple at first glance. But when the two were fully merged together, they formed an extraordinarily clever training method. Thinking about this, you looked at the white wolf with a deep sense of gratitude. Then you dove back in wholeheartedly and gave yourself fully to the practice at hand. Meanwhile, in the shadows not far away, unseen by you, Wang Hong stood watching this one-wolf, one-person training scene. And on his face, aged by time, there was now an expression full of shock and deep excitement. He understood perfectly what the white wolf's teaching meant for you right now. In truth, ever since Wang Hong had sensed the birth of qi in your dantian, he had already been entertaining the idea of cultivating you further. Wang Hong knew clearly that the infant stage was the period when a person's physical flexibility and plasticity was at its absolute strongest. The most straightforward proof of this was that a stretch a grown adult couldn't manage no matter how hard they tried. An infant could accomplish with ease after only a little practice. The younger you are, the greater the potential that can be unlocked. As a person grows older and each part of the body gradually solidifies into its final form, unless some heaven-defying miracle comes along, like a complete physical rebirth, a person's ceiling for combat power would already be silently set in stone. In a fight between martial artists, raw strength is only one aspect of it. Especially when the two sides are at the same level of cultivation, the gap in pure strength between them would barely be significant at all. It is precisely because of this that the skill of how you apply force, the use of footwork and body technique, the mastery of a weapon and countless other factors become the elements that determine the outcome of a battle. Among all the factors in combat, the most central one is naturally mastery of a weapon. In the martial way, the degree of weapon mastery is divided into 6 tiers. Entering the gate, proficiency, entering danger, great completion, transcendence, and communion with the divine. Every advance in mastery brings a decisive change to a martial artist's combat power. A martial artist at the peak blood-refining stage, who has their weapon mastery at entering danger, is someone that even a martial master a full great realm above them wouldn't dare provoke lightly. But equally, raising the upper limit of weapon mastery is far more difficult than increasing physical strength. The vast majority of martial artists throughout their entire lives can only ever hover at the threshold of proficiency. And the root reason for that comes down to the development of one's own body. The degree of control over a weapon is the most comprehensive and direct measure of a martial artist's physical abilities. Yet, unfortunately, in Wang Hong's understanding, let alone Lu family manor, even across the entire province, there simply did not exist any training method specifically designed for infants. Even martial masters or even grandmaster-level powerhouses, in their own infancy they were all in a state of complete ignorance and unawareness. No matter how powerful they were or how deeply they understood the martial way, they could never truly experience what it was like to be in an infant's body. Because of that, they naturally had no way to use that as a foundation to develop a physical training method tailored specifically for infants. But beasts were different. Under the harsh conditions of the wild, they reached independence far earlier than humans. Their young, not long after birth, would follow the adults and begin learning hunting techniques. It was precisely because of this that when it came to physical development in infancy, there was nothing in all of Lu family manor better suited for the task than the white wolf right in front of them. No wonder that when Lu Zhang heard his grandson had taken an interest in that white wolf, his emotions had been so overwhelming. Perhaps even in that very moment, he had already envisioned exactly the kind of situation unfolding right now. Thinking of this, Wang Hong couldn't help but feel his eyes grow slightly warm and moist. Not far in front of him, the child on the grass had not only managed to produce qi before even reaching half a year old, but right now also had the most perfectly suited teacher for his current situation, helping him unlock his body's potential. With both working together, Wang Hong didn't even dare imagine what terrifying heights this child's future could reach. Martial master? Grandmaster? If he dared to be even bolder, could becoming a martial sage, the realm above even that, be out of the question? Half a month later, in the back garden of Lu Manor, on the lush green grass, you were completing your final training session for the day under White Wolf's supervision. At that moment, you had your body pressed low to the ground, with slightly bent limbs and fully extended arms and legs. Seen from a distance, you looked no different from a small wolf pup. Your gaze was cold and focused, and your line of sight landed on a butterfly resting on a flower petal not far away. That tiny body launched like a bullet in an instant, hurling itself straight toward the butterfly. Just as your arm came within reach of it, your two hands, with remarkable speed, completed a cupping motion in midair. With a single move, you had locked the butterfly firmly in your palm. A clean strike. But the whole motion still didn't stop there. In midair, somehow you thrust hard off your back, and just as you were about to hit the ground face first, you pulled off a surprisingly nimble backflip. With a soft thud, your small body landed solidly on the ground. From the preparation to the leap, from the launch to the landing, the entire sequence flowed like water without a single hitch. It was truly hard to imagine that these were the movements of an infant who had just turned half a year old. But even after all of that, it was clear that White Wolf's evaluation of you was still not completely finished. The moment your body touched the ground, you crawled straight to White Wolf almost immediately. Then, right in front of him, you slowly opened your cupped hand. Bit by bit, the butterfly inside your palm had not suffered the slightest harm despite all those intense movements. Even after a short moment, it seemed to only then realize it had been plucked off a flower by someone. Only then, belated as it was, did it flap its wings and fly out of your palm. You looked at your White Wolf with wide, sparkling eyes, your little mouth making sounds, as if saying to him, "Hurry up and praise me." Naturally, such a flawless performance earned two very satisfied rumbles from Baijian. He even proactively lowered that massive head of his and used the softest part of his white fur to nuzzle gently against your body. In those amber eyes, beyond the bright gleam, there was also something that could only be described as a deep and genuine sense of being moved. Throughout the teaching sessions over this period, your performance every single day could almost be called flawless. Over these 2 weeks, you had not only fully mastered the physical stretching and breathing techniques White Wolf had taught, but you had also learned every single hunting-related movement and technique he taught you afterward without missing one. And today's scene, the butterfly catching exercise, was the most perfect demonstration of everything you had learned during this time. The day's training came to an end. White Wolf turned toward the spot behind you in the distance, which was right at the position where Steward Wang would always observe in secret. Lu Zhang naturally trusted his old partner completely. Steward Wang's role was mostly just to prevent outsiders from getting close and to report the daily updates back to Lu Zhang. On this particular night, you had just finished the final cycle of true energy circulation and slowly opened your eyes. Though you had only been following White Wolf in training for 2 months, the strengthening effect on your body had been extraordinary. Posture, breathing, application of force, all kinds of training from the inside out had fully activated the potential that lay dormant within you. Having developed chi sense before even reaching half a year old was something you had already been quite satisfied with as a baseline physical condition. But these 2 weeks of training had taken that original foundation and forcibly pushed your physical capabilities up by more than twofold. Not only that, you could sense with great clarity that the progress you'd made so far was only the most surface-level improvement. Your current physical condition had actually laid an incredibly solid foundation for your future cultivation in the martial way. What White Wolf's teachings had given you was not just the strengthening of your body in the present, but far more than that, it was a future of nearly limitless possibility. Without realizing it, sleep began to wash over you. Just as you were gradually drifting off, the panel that had been quiet for so long appeared once more in your mind and offered you a new set of options. You were now at the age where you could use the sounds of words to express meaning. The very first word an infant clearly speaks often carries special significance for the adults around them. Choose your very first clearly spoken word from among the options. Will you call out Mama? Your mother has given a great deal for you. She is truly wonderful. Your first word Mama would naturally make her feel very happy and touched. But just that alone won't be enough to untangle the knot in her heart right now. Neutral. Grandpa. Your grandfather is already satisfied enough with your recent performance. He has also already decided to give you his full and wholehearted support. Your calling out to him would certainly make him feel happy, but at most it would only serve as icing on the cake. Neutral. Uncle Bai. No matter how much character that White Wolf has, he's still just a White Wolf. Being the very first word you speak, it would just feel a bit odd no matter how you look at it. Of course, once Uncle Bai hears about it, he'd definitely come and lick your little bottom with that big red tongue of his. Neutral. This might sound a little unexpected, but it's not only the best option here. It will also have an extremely profound impact on your future. After all, your background is far more complicated than you know right now. Great fortune. This time there's actually something interesting. After looking at all 4 options, the labels attached to them had already made everything crystal clear. Having already received great fortune twice in a row, it was only natural to know how to make the right choice. It's just calling out Dada. That's an incredibly simple thing for me to do. Sir, this is bad. The very next morning, the midwife came rushing into Lu Manor's main hall with a flustered expression. Lu Zhang had just finished breakfast and was about to head to his study to read. What happened? At the sight of the midwife in this state, his brow furrowed instinctively. After all, ever since he had handed you over to White Wolf's care, the midwife had not put on such a dramatic show in a long time. The young master can call someone now. The midwife said breathlessly. He can call someone now. What's so dramatic about that? Lu Zhang's brow furrowed slightly at those words. It had already been more than half a month since Lu Feng had started gradually managing to produce some simple words through sound. Counting the time, it was about now that he should have been able to start clearly calling out to people. This was common sense that Lu Zhang was well aware of, and the midwife certainly should have found nothing surprising about it either. That was precisely why the midwife's panicked look left Lu Zhang feeling increasingly puzzled and uneasy. Sure enough, the thing is, the first 2 words the young master opened his mouth and called out clearly. When those last 2 words were right at the tip of her tongue, the midwife seemed like something was suddenly blocking her throat and she couldn't get them out. Having been witness to nearly everything that led to this moment, she already had a vague sense of how Lu Zhang would react upon hearing those 2 words. But this was something she simply couldn't hide even if she tried. After all, that little ancestor of hers, if he had only called it out once and stopped, it might have been manageable. But once he had called it out that one time, after calling Dada, it was like something had been uncorked. No matter how much she tried to correct him, the child just wouldn't stop. Well, what is it? Come on and say it. That hesitant, dragged-out manner of hers was making Lu Zhang increasingly restless. Though the midwife hadn't said it yet, at this point Lu Zhang had already vaguely guessed the answer on his own. The young master opened his mouth. The first word he called out clearly was Dada. After a moment of mental preparation, the midwife finally said it. Where is that boy? Take me to see him. Having gotten his answer, Lu Zhang slowly rose from his chair. He looked at the midwife and spoke with a darkened expression. When Lu Zhang was brought by the midwife to Lu Feng's room, he found his daughter Lu Yu sitting there with a look of pure joy, watching the child lying in the small bed. Though her face, still pale from recovery, was already streaked with tears, Lu Zhang could clearly feel that his daughter's whole mental state was the best it had been since she had returned to Lu family manor. When she noticed Lu Zhang's arrival, Lu Feng, who had been lying down just a moment ago, shot upright almost instantly. Then, with those big wide eyes fixed on his grandfather, he opened his mouth and called out Dada again. That utterly awkward scene naturally made the already darkened expression on Lu Zhang's face grow even worse. Did you teach him this? He looked at his daughter, asking in a tone that was almost an accusation. No. In the face of the suspicion, Lu Yu simply glanced at Lu Zhang briefly, then turned away and said nothing more. Her voice was soft, yet it carried an indescribable sense of resolve and unwillingness. Sir, you really can't blame the young miss for this. Seeing the situation turning tense, the midwife quickly stepped in to explain. During this whole time, the young master spends nearly every day outside with that big dog. When he comes back at night, he falls asleep quickly under this old servant's care. Even if the young miss had the intention, she simply would not have had the time. Actually, even without the midwife's explanation, Lu Zhang understood this logic perfectly well himself. If it had been just an occasional call here or there, it might have been overlooked. But the way this child was carrying on right now, no matter how you looked at it, seemed entirely like his own idea. In the past, Lu Zhang would never have believed that a child who had just turned half a year old could have such ideas of his own. But during this time, Lu Feng's various behaviors had long since made Lu Zhang deeply convinced that he was absolutely not an ordinary infant. Could it be that this child truly couldn't bear to see his own mother looking so downcast and hollow every day, and had chosen this way to help her? At that thought, the look in Lu Zhang's eyes as he regarded Lu Feng naturally softened a little. He bent down slightly and brought his face close to Lu Feng's, speaking directly. Child, call me grandpa. But what Lu Zhang never expected in the slightest was that the child's response came back as 3 syllables instead. Though the voice was quite muffled, the moment those 3 words reached his ears, he could barely contain the urge to absolutely explode in rage. What did this little brat just say? He demanded in a tone that was practically a roar. In response to your report, sir, it sounded like the child just said he wants to find his dada. The midwife replied in an extremely tiny voice. Actually, at this point, she already knew clearly that given how much Lu Zhang valued this child, now that things had come this far, a little bit of smoothing things over would not be enough to bring the matter to a close. Since that was the case, she might as well go along with the current and let things develop a little faster. The fundamental reason she chose to do this was that the midwife had always known that Lu Zhang was nowhere near as cold-hearted and ruthless as he appeared on the outside. Though it was true that after Lu Yu had gone against his will and married Lu Jian, Lu Zhang had declared he would sever ties with her completely. In private, Lu Zhang had actually quietly found many ways to offer covert help to the young couple. After all, given Lu Zhang's standing and authority throughout the entire manor, if he had truly been unwilling to tolerate Lu Yu and her husband, this young couple could never have survived here until now. The reason he put on this kind of face in public was more than anything else simply because he couldn't bring himself to lose face. After all, however you looked at it, he was the head of Lu family manor and the patriarch of the Lu clan. His own daughter had so brazenly defied his wishes, and if he simply chose to let it go, his authority and standing in the manor would inevitably take a hit. But the midwife knew all too well that with the passing of time, Lu Zhang's heart had already softened considerably, and especially with this child's arrival, he had in his heart almost completely accepted his daughter and that son-in-law of his. What Lu Zhang needed right now was really just a way out, a face-saving step. And now this child's seemingly reckless little move had landed right on time and given Lu Zhang exactly that step. Sure enough, the moment Lu Feng said fine dada, the Lu Yu beside him finally couldn't hold back the emotions she had been suppressing for so long. She spun around and looked at Lu Zhang, speaking in a tone that was barely holding together. Father, how long are you going to keep me and Jianji apart? At those words, the tears she had barely managed to stop just a moment ago came rushing back in an instant. Lu Zhang looked at his daughter, who was breaking down before him, then glanced at his grandchild staring up at him with those big hopeful eyes. Finally, after a brief silence, Lu Zhang let out a long, slow sigh. All right, where is Lu Jian right now? Could I trouble the midwife to have him come over? With those words spoken, even Lu Yu, who had still been in tears just a moment ago, instantly went quiet. She truly couldn't believe that the matter she had been bracing herself to fight to the death over after the child was settled had somehow, rather dramatically, just worked out like this. Not long after, inside Lu Feng's room, Xiao Yu, Jianji, Lu Yu and Lu Jian, a pair of star-crossed lovers who had been forcibly separated for over half a year, finally came face to face again, brought together by Lu Feng. After calling out to each other with deep longing, the two embraced tightly. There were no extra words needed. That one simple gesture alone said everything about the deep longing each had carried for the other. Ahem. But that touching scene was ultimately forced to close with a single pointed cough. Lu Jian reluctantly let go of Lu Yu and turned around with composure to face Lu Zhang standing not far away with a stern expression. Then, without hesitation, he called out and dropped to his knees. No matter what, I beg you, master, to allow me to remain by Xiao Yu and the child's side to care for them for a time. Once the child is safely grown, I will leave Lu family manor and never return. His voice was earnest. It was clearly words he had steeled himself with great determination to say. Lu Yu hadn't expected her husband to say something like that, but as long as it meant he could stay, she was willing, and so she knelt down right along with him. Oh dear, young miss, your body is still very weak. You can't be kneeling like this. The midwife beside them saw the moment perfectly and jumped in with a timely and well-placed nudge. Lu Zhang looked at the two kneeling before him, and especially at his own daughter whose face looked so haggard and worn. He turned his head once more and found his precious grandson Lu Feng lying in the small bed, those wide, glistening eyes looking up at him with pure anticipation. Finally, after a long slow sigh, he walked over to the two kneeling on the ground. Since you're here, just stay. With those words, the faces of both kneeling before him lit up with joy at the same moment. They exchanged a glance, and Lu Jian straightaway kowtowed, pressing his forehead heavily to the floor. Thank you, master, for your grace. Thank you, master, for your grace. Still bowing as he said it, Lu Jian repeated those words over and over. Lu Zhang bent down and helped Lu Yu to her feet, then turned to look at Lu Jian. He spoke calmly. After all this time, you still call me master? Upon hearing that, Lu Jian's eyes went wide in an instant. His whole body seemed to shudder as if struck by lightning. Of course he understood what Lu Zhang's words meant. The man had completely accepted him. Thank you, father-in-law, for your kindness. He bowed his head deeply to Lu Zhang once more. From now on, just take good care of my daughter, Lu Zhang said, while leading the midwife toward the door. As for your son, he's doing just fine. No need to worry about him too much. With those parting words, Lu Zhang closed the door firmly from outside. Genji, what are you still kneeling for? Get up already. As she said it, Lu Yu's face showed for the first time a genuinely heartfelt smile. Lu Jian was clearly still immersed in the overwhelming joy of being accepted. He slowly got to his feet and looked over at Lu Feng in the small bed across the room. What exactly did father just mean by that last remark? He asked, a bit puzzled. Oh, this is quite the story, let me tell you, Lu Yu said while bringing Lu Jian over to Lu Feng's little bed. These past days, weakened after giving birth, and weighed down by her low spirits, she had spent nearly every day lying in bed. But even so, she cared about her son deeply without question. Everything that had been happening over this time, she had kept herself fully informed of. Every time the steward and the midwife came by, she would ask them in detail about her child's situation. So our son is bound to grow up and become someone truly remarkable, Lu Jian said with an excited look, staring at Lu Yu. The stream of good news one after another had left him visibly a little overwhelmed and keyed up. I don't know about that. I just hope he grows up safe and sound, Lu Yu said with a tender, loving look as she gently stroked Lu Feng's head. Oh, by the way, Xiao Yu, I came this time and also brought something specially for this little one. As Lu Jian said this, he reached into his chest and pulled out a jade pendant. The pendant was pure and translucent throughout, like sunlit jade, and even in daylight you could faintly see the gentle glow radiating from it. Is that the keepsake your mother left you, the one she kept close to her? Lu Yu asked. That's the one. I kept trying to give it to you before and you always refused. Now I'm giving it to our child. You can't stop me this time, Lu Jian said while placing the pendant beside Lu Feng's small hand. The moment the pendant appeared within Lu Feng's line of sight, with just one look, he could already sense that this thing was absolutely out of the ordinary. This must be the item the prompt had referred to as having a lasting and profound impact on his future. But how could his father possibly have something so remarkable? Lu Feng quietly wondered. What Lu Feng naturally didn't know at this moment was that Lu Jian's mother and father, in other words, his paternal grandparents, were a truly legendary pair within Lu family manor. Unlike ordinary women of the manor, Lu Feng's grandmother had been brought back from outside by Lu Feng's grandfather Lu Yuanshan. In his youth, Lu Yuanshan had been considered an absolute standout talent within Lu family manor. His aptitude for the martial way was in no way inferior to that of Lu Zhang, the clan head's eldest son at the time. However, after coming of age, he had not stayed in the manor. Instead, he had chosen to set out on his own and forge his path in the outside world. Several years later, when he returned to Lu family manor, he arrived with a mysterious woman dressed in white by his side. According to the few village women who had been lucky enough to catch a glimpse of her face, the woman was strikingly beautiful, with exquisite features and an ethereal, otherworldly grace. For a time, The whole of Lu family manor was buzzing with talk that Lu Yuanshan had extraordinary luck and had brought back a celestial being from beyond. But this divine-looking couple did not stay in the manor for long. When Lu Jian was 3 years old, Lu Yuanshan left Lu family manor with that woman and had not been heard from since. This jade pendant was the only thing Lu Jian's mother had left behind before she departed. Though Lu Feng had no knowledge of the stories behind this pendant, the moment his right hand made contact with its surface, a stream of warm and gentle energy flowed directly from his palm into his body. Not only that, the true energy inside him was actually drawn along by that warm current and began to circulate on its own. Gradually, as the process continued, that warm current and the true energy within him slowly merged into one. And then, to Lu Feng's pleasant surprise, with that warm current absorbed into it, the true energy inside his body had actually grown noticeably denser. This pendant has the ability to nurture and strengthen the true energy within me. Lu Feng was naturally overjoyed at discovering such an effect. He quickly held the pendant in both hands, brought it up close, and began examining it carefully. Besides the very unusual material it was made of, the pendant had complex and delicately carved patterns on both sides. Although he didn't understand the meaning of these patterns, the moment he took one look at them, a single thought rose in Lu Feng's mind. This pendant was absolutely not as simple as it appeared on the surface. Nurturing his true energy was merely the nature of the unusual material it was made from. What lay within the pendant was quite possibly where its true secret resided. With that thought in mind, Lu Feng carefully tried channeling his true energy along the patterns on the surface of the pendant, slowly seeping it inward. Sure enough, as the process continued, before long Lu Feng was astonished to discover that inside the pendant there was actually an enormous separate spatial dimension. And right at the very center of that space there lay a scroll that emanated an ancient and time-worn aura. Lu Feng focused his attention on the cover of the ancient text. On the front face, written in a bold and imposing style of brushwork, were 5 large characters. What a domineering name for an ancient text. Lu Feng quietly marveled to himself. Had he seen a book bearing such a name anywhere else, Lu Feng might have felt the title was somewhat overly boastful. But if this ancient text were connected to that jade pendant made of such mysterious material, then this was truly the great text the system prompt had been pointing toward all along. With that thought settled, Lu Feng eagerly began to turn the pages of the book in his mind, reading through it slowly. The introductory portion was quite thin, and the content recorded was not especially lengthy. After finishing the entire introduction, Lu Feng found that this ancient text was actually a cultivation manual focused on spiritual power. During this time, apart from White Wolf's training sessions, the midwife would also occasionally take Lu Feng on walks to the training ground as Lu Zhang had instructed. Gradually, he had picked up scattered bits of information about martial artists from people around him. He had heard some things about body tempering cultivation methods, but something about spiritual power cultivation, this was genuinely the first time he had ever come across it. Quite possibly, this method of spiritual cultivation was an exceedingly rare thing. But regardless, whatever it was, its appearance was clearly of immense significance to Lu Feng right now. After all, following White Wolf's teachings in physical posture and breathing techniques, his efficiency in circulating true energy and strengthening his body had been increasing day by day. And now, with the appearance of this ancient text, he would be able to advance on the level of spiritual power as well. Beyond the brief written explanations, the core of the Dawangshanyan scripture was the 4 star charts across its final 4 pages. Each star chart was composed of 7 star clusters connected together. According to the descriptions in the book, they corresponded respectively to the azure dragon of the east with 7 mansions, the black tortoise of the north with 7 mansions, the vermilion bird of the south with 7 mansions, and the white tiger of the west with 7 mansions. The cultivation method itself was also quite straightforward. You simply needed to imprint the star chart directly into your mind and begin contemplating it. Each time the spiritual power was strengthened by 1 degree, 1 cluster of stars on the chart within your mind would be lit up. When a complete star chart was fully illuminated, it signified that your spiritual power had entered the next realm. The 4 charts corresponded exactly to the 4 stages of spiritual power: mind condensing, early clarity, spirit nurturing, and divine communion. After completing the last special training mission, White Wolf had very generously given Lu Feng a few days off. Since he had nothing else to do, Lu Feng decided to begin his very first spiritual power cultivation session right away. For Lu Feng right now, compared to physical cultivation, spiritual cultivation suited him far better. After all, his soul was nothing like his physical body, not bound by objective limitations. Physical training had to take into account the impact on future physical development, but soul cultivation had absolutely no such concern to worry about. If he decided to do it, he'd do it. With that thought firmly in mind, Lu Feng immediately followed the method recorded in the ancient text and projected the first star chart into his mind. Then he focused his full concentration and began his contemplation. What caught Lu Feng a little off guard was that not only did this very first session of contemplation go without any obstacles whatsoever, but right after it ended, the first star cluster of the Azure Dragon 7 mansions had already been lit up directly by him. If he compared it to his entry into martial cultivation, reaching the point of producing qi on his own had still taken 2 full months, even with Steward Wang's dedicated and tireless assistance. Putting it side by side like that, the speed at which he had entered the path of spiritual cultivation was impossibly fast. If his natural talent in the martial way was inherited from his grandfather, then where did his talent on the spiritual path even come from? Could it be because he was a transmigrator and his soul carried a naturally higher baseline than ordinary beings? That could be it. Apart from that, there didn't seem to be any other explanation. Lu Feng quietly mulled it over in his mind. Whatever the case, advancing quickly was certainly a good thing. After all, who would ever feel trouble just because they had too much talent? Lighting up the first star cluster marked the moment Lu Feng had officially stepped into the first realm of the spiritual path, the mind-condensing realm. The benefits that came with this improvement in spiritual power were naturally clear to see right away. The most obvious change was that Lu Feng found that his own perceptive awareness had increased dramatically compared to before. Now, as long as he was willing, Lu Feng could even make out the hushed whispers of the servants in the room next door. And this kind of perceptive awareness would undoubtedly keep growing stronger as more star clusters were lit up. Even just this one effect alone had already made Lu Feng feel deeply pleased. After all, in battle, the advantage that powerful perceptive awareness could bring was absolutely beyond question. However, once the strong surge of joy had subsided, a wave of deep and heavy drowsiness crashed over Lu Feng like a tide. This spiritual cultivation somehow felt even more exhausting than physical training. That was the very last thought that passed through Lu Feng's mind just before he fell asleep. Just like that, another month went by steadily. Throughout that month, during the day Lu Feng still practiced as usual alongside his white wolf in the back courtyard, while at night he would lie in his small bed and contemplate the Azure Dragon star chart in his mind. Little by little, as his spiritual power gradually strengthened, Lu Feng was pleasantly surprised to find that his need for sleep was slowly starting to decrease. For Lu Feng right now, this was naturally wonderful news. Cultivating both his body and his spiritual power was an incredibly time-consuming endeavor. The reduction in sleep solved that problem perfectly. 3 months later, one evening, Lu Yu gazed tenderly at Lu Feng, who had closed his eyes and fallen asleep, and reached out to tuck the blanket gently around him. Just as she was about to rise, the wind chime hanging by the window suddenly made a faint sound. But wait, she had already closed the window properly. Lu Yu looked back with a puzzled expression and saw that the window was indeed, just as she thought, shut firmly without a gap. Perhaps she had heard it wrong. She smiled wryly and shook her head, then slowly stood up. What Lu Yu didn't notice was that the very moment the wind chime sounded, Lu Feng, who lay with his eyes closed, turned up the very faintest hint of a barely perceptible smile at the corner of his lips. Just moments ago, after 4 months of contemplation, he had finally lit up the second star cluster in the Azure Dragon star chart. If his sense of it was right, then at this point he could try using his spiritual power to influence certain things in his surroundings. And the sound of that wind chime just now was a small experiment Lu Feng had done all on his own.